Welcome back to Taylordturnings. Well, today we've got some bad news. So yesterday I spent a lot of time recording a video for today and spent a lot of time editing it and ran into some space issues which caused the video to cut out in the middle of it. But then during editing ran into space issues again based upon some settings that I had. The equipment that I have, the iPhone, my iPad, and some storage devices, I really don't have the capability to record in 4K. So that's a lesson that I've learned. And the problem is when I went to the editing software, would not download the edited video because the space was burned up by the video source content. So I went out and deleted the source content. Well, unfortunately, that deleted it then from the editing software. So huge lesson learned, big waste of time. I mean, I did get the material turned and got one of the seam rippers made, went through all the processes that it took to get there. So I'll probably have to make another video next week, but I at least wanted to get something out there for you and show how this one turned out, as well as another one that I had turned before. I'll also show you some pens. So this is all part of it. Believe me, not exactly the happiest about the sequence of events that went on with this digital stuff, but it's a learning experience. And so it is what it is. There's nothing more that I can do but laugh it off. At least it wasn't money wasted. It was just time. So live and learn. You know, like I've said before, we're probably all processing through this. I don't know if you make video content or if you're just talking about making projects, but sooner or later, you're going to have something go wrong like that where you lose your efforts one way or the other. A project goes sideways, splits out on you. You know, just tangents, I guess. You know, some tangents, but things that happen. So anyway, yesterday's content was all pretty much about making phase 3 video on the seam ripper. So little prelude, I'll probably do a video next week about actually making it. It'll be one of the other blanks that we had cut, maybe a couple of them. But I'll show you you get your dessert before you get the meat and veg. So you'll get to see the one that was completed in the video that was supposed to be for today. So I'll hold this up here and you can see how it turned out. So this was the shape that I decided to put in it. It's kind of hard to show here on video, but there actually is some detail put in here on the one end compared to the other end, which does not have that. And that is just to kind of let the user know which, you know, that there's two different ends, and they'll have to remember which one of these seam rippers they put in each end. So there is a small one and a large one. So I think you can see that here on the video. It kind of depends on what you're sewing. Not only the material that you're sewing with, but in my experience, and I'm not a seamstress, but my experience is sometimes depending on the number of stitches per inch that you put into whatever you're sewing and you're trying to rip apart, sometimes that big one is not the right thing because it's just the stitches are too tight. So you can't either get this under it or it snags the material or whatever, and so you need something just a little bit smaller. That's how I've used them in the past. So anyway, this one's double-ended, and the user will just have to remember, hey, in this, I mean, you can switch them for end to end, so it'll be up to the user, but you know, at least it's, you know, identified on this end, hey, this one's the big one and the other end's the small one. So of course you're only using one end at a time. So when you're not using it, it just turns around and stores in the end of it. There's a piece of spring steel inside of here that holds them in place. So the nice thing about these is not, I mean, the seam ripper obviously, but also, you know, your idea in putting a pattern in it. And like I say, I think you can see it here a little bit with that black toolbox in the background. There's just a little bit of definition here. You can feel it and you can see it in person compared to the other end, which is much longer. So that's how the one turned out. I talked about that blank material in the prior video about how it actually formed a split. Don't know if you're going to be able to pick it up here the way I have this lighting. Oh, there we go. So that shows it. There's a split in this material. We'll come to find out, I don't know that it actually is a split. I mean, it does kind of look like it because it does curve at the one end, but I think what that actually is, I'll turn it around this way, make me make more sense. So if this was sitting down in the mold and they poured this acrylic, whenever you're pouring up against a dissimilar surface, you're going to get a little wrap up. So in this case, the wood, it's going to hang on the side of that wood just a little bit. The rest of it is perfectly straight. So I think what this is this was actually poured in 2 pours. They do that a lot because the air bubbles that get trapped in there are easier to get out if you do multiple pours. Now, some of what this material is, I have in thicker slabs that was single poured, but this, for whatever reason, probably came from a portion that was double poured. And so that crack, while it actually looks like a crack, it is not all the way through, though it does show up on both sides, but it's not a crack where I can peel it apart. So I think what you actually have, and I forget what they call that, but where it actually kind of wraps up onto the side of the glass. If you've ever done physics or wine sampling, it's talked about there periodically. So if you pour something into a glass and you were to fill it all the way to the rim, the center of where you pour it is actually not at the top of the rim because they kind of capillary up the side. I don't know if that's the right term, but so I think that's what's actually happened here, especially since this acrylic is fairly thick, very viscous when you pour it. It's a difference between water and oil. Even thicker than that yet. So as you pour it in here, it's going to want to carry up that wood, especially if while you were pouring any of it touch that wood. It's going to hang up there a little bit. So I don't think that this is actually damaged. And one of the other reasons that I came to that conclusion, I had made a seam ripper in this material, and I've showed it briefly in one of my shorts. And also, I think either in this video or in some of the footage that I lost, I had mentioned that there's a couple of different types of seam rippers. So before I get to that, this material, as it's turned out, I talked about painting the brass tube before putting it in here. I believe that I talked about that in one of the videos. So this is the same exact material as what I just showed you. So it's just like this. This is inevitably probably from the same block of wood, although these were chunks in a much larger piece. So this is after it's finished and turned down. It's even darker here than what it is in the square block here, which you would think it would be darker. There's more material, but so this is how it turned out. This one I did use a gold kit, so it shows up really good against that material, but it turns out, and this is why I rave about it. These kind of splotches that you see in here, they're actually voids from the glue, from gluing in that brass tube into the center. But that is, I did paint it. I painted it black, and then I put it in here. But I don't know if you can see it or if there's a way for me to, perhaps if I turn it this way, I can get it to show up. There it is. So you can see that what I thought was a crack is actually in this one too. It's not a crack, it's a poured layer. And if I turn this 180 degrees around, this is the other reason why I'm pretty sure it's not a crack, but rather a poured layer. It then shows up on the other side. And the same way, where it hits the wood, I can't get away from the light reflection here, but when it hits the wood, it curls up on the end, or it curls up in the direction of the larger portion. So in this case, let me turn it around this way. That crack with the material kind of curls up towards the top of this wood where it's broader. And on the opposite end, it kind of curls a little bit down. I don't know if it's not going to show up for me to explain it, but I think you saw it in the other one. So I think what that is as it's poured in, it wants to get a little convex or concave, depending on which end of it you're looking at, against the bordering material. So this is not cracked. This is solid as could be. It is all the way, these pieces have not come apart, and they haven't come apart in the blank yet, and the blank has no at the time had no tube in it. Well, still doesn't. This blank that we thought was ruined, I have not glued a tube into it. So if that was truly a crack, that would have come apart. So anyway, this is the reason why I love this material. So switching gears a little bit, I love this coloring. It turns out really good. It's got kind of a metallic-y look, and then they kind of almost look like clouds in there with the voids and the glue that you're seeing transparent through the blue material. The wood is a native Florida wood. I couldn't tell you what it is, but it has a lot of figuring to it. Probably a little bit of spalting in there as well. So to give you an idea, when I talked about the coloring and it changes based upon what color you paint the tube, if you go to white or black, you're painting that brass tube inside. So this is an example. This is the exact same material, albeit from a different segment of that raw material. But that material looks exactly the same all the way through it. So it changes based upon whatever color of that tube you use. So I think that's a pretty good indication that we're getting a lot of lighting here, or a lot of reflection from the light above this bench. But still, you get an idea. It's very light. It's very kind of beachy blue. It's got a lot of wave pattern to it, kind of, if you were imagining the ocean. So this is kind of how it turns out. Now this is in pen form. So this is a twist top pen. And I really like this particular version of pen. So I'll show you some more of those here in a minute. But as far as the seam rippers go, I think in the video footage that I lost, I actually talked about a couple of different kits. It might have been in the last video, but anyway. So these two kits are different. This one still has the seam ripper end in it. So, you know, it's very similar in that aspect, but the two kits, they're different in the way that they mount into the tube when you've reversed them around and start using them. So this one has two little rubber O-rings on it. And if you don't keep those O-rings with just a hint of oil on them, then as you're putting them in and out of the body of the seam ripper, they have a tendency to come out of here, and they'll go flying across the room, and you won't be able to find them because they're really, really small. So I haven't had that issue with this one, but I had with a couple others that I made. And so I've moved away from this style of kit over to this other one that uses a spring steel inside of this barrel that you install. Hopefully you'll end up seeing that in the video maybe next week. The installation of the spring material and how we cut this and work it and clean it up. But so that's a little bit of difference between those two kits. Just, you know, as you're looking around at the kits, you can experiment, you can find out what works for you. My opinion, this is the better kit, not because of the color or the finish, the chrome or versus the brass or gold, but just because of these rubber O-rings. I just don't like this style. So I have since quit. This is my personal that I have. So this one I'm not looking to give away or sell. This one here will probably end up going into the sale at the show. If I end up getting enough of them made by then. It's coming up pretty quick. So I don't know if I'll make it this year, maybe in the fall. We'll see. So that's the seam rippers, and you'll see, hopefully I'll record another video and you'll get to see how those turn out. So another kind of neat little project. I wouldn't record a video about it, but I made this stand. These are just straight through holes because these seam rippers are straight on the end. It's a piece of walnut. It's about 1 inch thick, maybe just a little under 7/8 maybe, but it's between there. And the nice thing is that when they go in, they don't really stick out the bottom, but I do have these little press-on rubber feet that I put onto the stand, and the walnut's heavy, so even if there's only 1 or 2 of these things in there, it's not gonna, you know, tip over. But I think, I don't know, there's like 17 holes in here to hold these, so there'll be plenty of room. So going over to the pens, which are very, very similar, just a little bit different kit. So again, this is a piece of walnut. It's the same material. It's actually the same thickness, but in these, I've since purchased some tapered drill bits, so I'll have a different way. One of them got a little skewed sideways here. This one here doesn't go in quite straight, but I kind of tapered my drill bit, you know, as I went in, so it's really small on the bottom and larger on the top. And I did 3 or 4 different segments of that so it would hold them. The rest of them hold pretty nice, but this one just got a little square or a little off square with the base. So these are some different pens, all the same exact kit, but this one here is a satin finish. These two, well, I guess this one here on the end is also gold, kind of a gold finish or brass finish. And then these two here are a chrome plated finish. So just to give you an idea of the different types of material, and I didn't bring any out. We'll do that in another segment sometime, but these are all acrylics. This one here is the hybrid that we talked about. The other ones are straight up acrylics. This is very similar to what we're doing with the seam ripper, the green seam ripper I showed you. This is a kind of a chip acrylic. So there's little beads or chunks of chips acrylic that are put into a resin, and then you turn it down. These other ones, so this one here is an acrylic, but it's done as the acrylic is going in, you mix in another pigment of acrylic and you kind of swirl it around. So this one here, you would have started off with an acrylic color at one end, and then you just pour, as you're pouring it into your mold, you pour one color, then you pour another color, then you pour another color, or in this case, probably just two colors. And in the middle, they kind of naturally will come together, and so you kind of get that fade effect from end to end. But one end is real yellow with orange. If you saw a larger blank of this, you'd see that this was truly, I think, 3, maybe even 4 colors. But started off yellow, went to orange, kind of faded to a green, and the fade here made a light green. And then it gets darker as you go up. Now there was another little piece up above here too that was trimmed off. So this style here is very similar to the green one in that you're pouring they poured one color of resin. But in this case, they actually used a couple of different techniques. So here they poured the orangey color or brown colored resin in there, and it's got a lot of metallic mica in it. But then they poured, I believe, some darker, either brown or black, mixed in with that resin. And then they took a white and kind of swirled it along inside of the liquid as it was curing. And then this is kind of the same thing. This is all one color, but with some black and white swirling done throughout it. So instead of, when you're making that, instead of just pouring it in real fast into the mold, like a real broad, what they do is they kind of just get it to where it's pouring like a little tiny ribbon of material through it. And then they kind of wander it around back and forth through the mold. And then sometimes, depending on how much swirling they want, they'll actually take like a pen tip or a toothpick and kind of drag that coloring. So in this case, dragging the black throughout it to get that swirl pattern. Again, this green has a lot of mica metallic in it. So some of these have more, some of them have less. So this gold one again is the chip. And it's just got different colored chips inside of an orange resin. So that gives you an idea of what you can do with either seam rippers or pens. There's many other things that you can make. There's hundreds of other kits, screwdrivers, bigger blocks of resin you can use for making wine stoppers. I don't have any out here. Maybe I'll make it the thumbnail for this video. You can make wine stoppers. They make kits for those. You can make, I've made a couple of ice cream scoopers. There's other kitchen utensils, grilling utensils that you can make with them. The hard part is that all this stuff, when you make it nice, look nice and pretty like that, is it, well, do you want to use it? But then also, you're like, it's going to sit in your drawer. It's not on display. So you got to decide, you know, is this something that's going to be out? That's why I like the pens. Most people are going to have those out in front of them. Seam rippers kind of along that same lines. So the other kit, or the other projects rather, are still coming along. We will be doing some more videos on the next stage of the clock that might take us, it might take us 2 more segments to do. So you saw segment 1 already. Segment 2 and segment 3 have not been recorded yet, but we'll get back to that project. Also, I picked up a couple of other tools along the way. So one of them still en route. I've got a Craig panel cutter mount for my circular saw that allows me to cut 4x8 or whatever sheets of plywood. And it's a jig, so it allows you to cut them very symmetrical every time. You know, it's going to keep it the same way every time. I do have access to a table saw, but it's currently off on a job site right now being used, so this will help me out. Also, when you're using a table saw, it can be a little hard with a 4x8 sheet, so this will help me trim that down to the smaller pieces that I need, and then I can run them through a table saw when that comes back. So I've got that coming. I also purchased a Craig pocket hole jig. I didn't go extravagant on these. I kind of used not the bottom of the line, or not the cheapest choice within Craig. I did want to stay with Craig because it's a well-known name, but I'll grab it here real quick just so you can see it. And we'll wrap up this video. But so I bought the Craig C-clamp vice grips. I suppose that's a trade name, but C-clamp the Craig sells to go with this kit. And then it comes in a nice box. And then it's when you go out and you look for these things, there's a lot of different styles that you can get. You can get a tabletop model, or that kind of clamps down in a bench vise. But this is the Craig pocket hole jig. And then it's got a fixture that goes on top of it here. And plugs in, and then your clamp, the foot of that clamp actually slides into this piece and it clamps down. So we'll show you how to use that, but I just wanted to show you that I got some new toys. So didn't spend a lot of money on them. I think between the two, the Craig panel cutter I think was $40, and I think I spent another $40 on this. So not terribly expensive, but, you know, every time you start doing more and more and more, you're like, oh, I got to buy the kit. Well, then, to do the project, or I got to buy the material to do the project, but I also need the tools to do it. So this is something I've wanted for a long time. So we'll try it out. If it ends up being something that I use frequently, I like to do some cabinets around the house. If I do, then perhaps later on down the road, I'll buy the other one. But for now, I'll try it out with this kit. It's fairly inexpensive. So, sorry that this wasn't more elaborate of a video for this week, but I guess we're about 20-25 minutes here. So again, want to say thank you for tuning in. I wished I had something more as far as content to give you this week, but technical errors got me. So we'll get this one published for you, and we'll see you next week with a better video. So don't forget, guys, to go out and like, share, and subscribe if you would. I really appreciate it. Helps out the channel. Doesn't cost you anything, but really does help out me. But I do appreciate you tuning in. We're going to get better at this. The last video, I had it all ready to go before it crashed, and it was highly edited. Not as high as some, but definitely higher than my previous videos. And I had segments in with music. I had segments in with special features. I had all sorts of stuff plugged in there, and then it died at the last minute. So disappointing, but hey, we'll recover. So we'll see you next time around. Again, I appreciate you tuning in. Go out, check out Taylordturnings.com. Got to get some posts out there for a couple of these projects that I've turned that aren't posted yet, but there's a ton of other stuff out there. Also on the Instagram, that's my main place that I do the updates with projects that I've made. Go out and check out the Instagram. It's the same thing, Taylordturnings.com. And don't forget, subscribe down below and hit the like button. Really appreciate you guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Thanks.